Nando, my hellos to you. Please sit down. No, not there. He's still a little damp.
What's going on, Flavio? Have you found a way to get me out of the terrible McLaren yet?
Baby, all is super cool and sexy time, my friend. I got you special job driving in Indy 500. Bricky line, roundy, stars and stripes bikini.
The Indy 500? Wow, that's great. It's my dream to drive in the Indy 500. What engine will I have?
Is Honda.
Oh.
And then you must return to the Formula 1. Drivey, disappointy, breaky down a lap 24.
Oh, no.
There, Nandi, don't be a cry. Here, make dry the eyes with this. No, wait, that's not handkerchief. Lazy.
Hello, welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed. I'm the one called Gareth, he's the one called Richard.
Hello.
And the one called Zog.
Hello.
Has just come back from Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm just about getting back on UK time.
You were out there, what, shooting guns and gambling?
Mostly gambling. Well, no, playing poker, not gambling. There is a difference.
There's a difference.
There is a difference.
So you didn't do any roulettes or
I had one spin of a roulette wheel, just for the hell of it, but no, just played poker for 5 hours a day.
5 hours a day.
Did a bit of light shooting and drinking, checked out the Grand Canyon.
Ah.
You realise if the Grand Canyon was in Yorkshire, it would still be called the Grand Canyon. When were you last in Las Vegas?
I don't think they'd be that enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it's alright as a canyon.
Alright, canyon.
When were you last there, Richard?
I've only been once, and I went probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. It was a bit weird because
Las Vegas is a bit
Las
weird.
Vegas is a bit weird, and my wife wasn't very well. She had the flu, and she was just feeling rancid, and we sat down in a restaurant in our hotel, and then she went, "I'm really sorry, I feel terrible, I'm going to have to go to the room." Just as the bottle of wine arrived, and I went, "Right, shall I come?" And she went, "No, God, you order food, just cancel my food, you stay here." So I drank a whole bottle of wine on my own really quickly and guzzled down some food, and then went outside and watched those big fountains outside the hotel.
Bellagio.
Yeah, I went, "Wee, these are nice fountains, aren't they?" And the next morning we woke up and she went, "I'm still feeling a bit ropey." I went, "Fine, I'll go and get you some medicine. There's a pharmacy just down the road, I'll go to it." Walked into the pharmacy, the first voice I heard was some woman going, "Oh, Tilly, what do you think, I'm still drunk?" Wherever you go in the world, there's always brumming.
Always a brumming.
It's a disorienting
It's a
town
weird
in
old place,
every
isn't it?
possible way.
I think,
on
a car tip, I think that Vegas was where I don't think I've ever seen more cars on, like, mad, huge donk wheels or spinners. I think there's a lot of sort of
It's not a
mucking
subtle
around with
town.
cars. No.
Or
It is
limos.
not a subtle
Lots
town.
of
Stretch limos.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense because it's just one straight road right the way through the strip, isn't it?
Well, there is a lot more to that. Totally recommend. Go up to the top of the stratosphere, go to the bar on the 107th floor, and by the way, 2 for 1 cocktails on a 107th floor bar looking over Las Vegas is one of the more disorienting experiences you will probably
bet it
have.
is.
It's a lot more than just one strip with a lot of stuff either side. It's been one of the fastest growing cities in the States for a couple of decades. And there's a lot more to it than just that strip. But the new strip, where they've got all the particularly obviously crazy the half-scale model of the Eiffel Tower erupting through one adult theme park, whilst the dancing fountains are just on the other side of the road, and then you've got this absurd Roman palace just a few hundred yards away.
It's a very sort of Trumpian view of sophistication, isn't it? The more fake columns and replicas of genuine pieces from European cities. It's a lunatic's vision of what the world should be like.
Yes, and speaking of lunatic's vision, I mean, actually, the Trump Tower, there is a Trump Tower there, which is sort of sitting rather sort of forlornly on its own, rather apart from the rest of the fun stuff. Whilst I missed out on seeing the what is apparently rather a nice classic car collection, the Link Hotel, while I was there, I did have some quite interesting experiences with Uber, because I ended up not hiring a car at all when I was there, mainly because I spent most of my time slightly drunk and it didn't seem like a very good idea. It's mostly too big to walk around, so you've got to get around on some form of wheeled transport.
Not
Actually,
a Vauxhall Viva, then? In Las Vegas?
The public transport, actually, the bus is pretty good, but the Uber experiences, what happens every time you get an Uber in London? What car do you get every time you get an Uber?
A Prius.
Price.
You get it right, okay, there you go.
Potato.
Yeah. I guess, so, all the rides I had all week, I think, I had a Prius once, Other times it was, Mercedes M-Class, Mercedes C-Class, Hyundai Sonata, a couple of Toyota Corollas, a Dodge Ram.
Really?
Yeah, with a 4.7-litre V8 engine, driven by the lovely lady trucker Juliet, who'd formerly been a big rig driver.
No.
So she downsized to a Dodge Ram. I mean, how's that for an Uber ride?
It's much more interesting than another price turning up. Do you know what happened to me the other day in London? Because, the app tells you what's coming. In fact, two things have happened to me in the past sort of 2 weeks. One, Honda Insight. Not the really cool little coupe one, the more recent one. But just as a sort of break from the prices, I went, oh, cool, that'd be interesting. But it's not as good as a Prius. And it started with it turns up, and the shape is broadly similar to a Prius, because that's a very aerodynamically efficient shape. That's why those hybrids tend to be that shape. Yep. But getting into it, so the door opens, and it all feels very Prius-y. The door frame is a little bit lower, and I bang my head getting in.
Well, you are kind of a tall chap.
I'm a bit lanky.
There's a reason for getting a Prius in London.
Congestion charge.
Yeah. If they're going to drive into the middle of London, they have to have a hybrid or a car that is below the CO2 limit, whatever it is the rule these days, because none of us drive into central London anymore, do we? But in Las Vegas, there's no such prerequisite.
No such crazy rules, no such crazy restrictions on your personal freedom to drive whatever the hell you want. And lovely time chatting to all my Uber drivers.
They didn't overshare in that American way, did they?
No, really. A lovely chat with Terry on the way back from the Museum of Atomic Testing.
The Museum of Atomic Testing.
One of two very good museums in Las Vegas. One, the Museum of Atomic Testing, for all your atomic testing needs. Also, and it has, you like this, Gareth, they had one of the Nerva project atomic test rockets.
No, the Nerva project was an attempt to build an engine that was nuclear in design to provide enough power to lift a post-Saturn V rocket, which was a phenomenally big thing. They had that there. How exciting.
I'll show you pictures later. But also, the Mob Museum, the Museum of Organised Crime and Law Enforcement.
Really? In Las Vegas, who'd have thought that there would be a need for that?
Had Al Capone's revolver. They had reconstructed brick by brick the very original wall against which the St. Valentine's massacre took place.
Really? We may have gone off the topic of cars here, haven't we?
Back onto the Uber. One of my drivers was a fascinating musician, playwright, actor, director who lived in London years ago. He was only doing the Uber thing, he explained, because his therapist had recommended that he do it to kind of, decompress a bit and get off his projects.
This is a very California story.
When he'd lived in England, he'd received driving lessons, racing lessons from Graham Hill. He used to know Graham Hill. So how was that for a Vegas trip?
And what was he driving?
That he was driving a Hyundai Sonata.
Hyundai Sonata, man.
Which is quite a nice ride.
Hyundai do well in the States, don't they? They do better in Canada, I believe, don't they? Also, Yugo used to do really well in Canada, didn't they? There's something about the Canadian market. They like an economy car, don't they? I'm pleased that Las Vegas is Hyundai territory now.
When you're in Vegas, get an Uber share, talk to your driver, and play poker at the Golden Nugget, and the 6 o'clock tournament at Caesar's Palace is well worth checking out. And the seats at Caesar's Palace are much more comfortable than the Golden Nugget.
I can't do that because I don't know how to play poker. I do know how to play poker.
Come on,
I'm just
I'll get a couple
unbelievably bad at it.
The last time I was in Las Vegas, I did some driving. I'm trying to remember what it was. Early 90s Chrysler convertible. What would it have been? LeBaron.
Yes,
LeBaron.
Possibly,
It was a LeBaron, which I drove to the Grand Canyon and then to Los Angeles and did, a
nice
big
road trip.
Yeah. It was my honeymoon. Back in the days before Violet and I were together, I was married to someone. And get this, I can trump your bizarre experiences in Las Vegas. On my honeymoon in Las Vegas, I got a kiss from Björk of the Sugar Cubes, and Bono gave me a giant bottle of champagne and blessed my marriage. It didn't work that well because ultimately the marriage fell apart. But
what a trip.
It was quite a trip. Wow. Quite a trip. What a trip, man.
That's extraordinary.
It actually happened.
I think your Uber experiences are slightly chime with the last time that I was in Los Angeles seeing my wife's family, and the first Uber I got was a Prius. I thought,
Okay, so back into the old routine, yeah.
But, I believe that Uber specifically tell their drivers you don't chat with the passenger unless the passenger starts the conversation. It's one of the things I actually quite like about it, because quite often I'm a grumpy I'm just not feeling chatty. And I had this from our local cab firm when I was going to the airport a lot last year doing the Grand Tour. I once got picked up by a chatty driver from my local cab firm, and he loved to chat and he wouldn't shut up, and after a while it was a bit wearing. And then the next time I called a cab from my local cab firm, it was real crack of fire. It was like sort of 5:30 in the morning. Car pulled up outside at Price, got in. Oh God, it's chatty cabby again, and he's taking me all the way up to Luton Airport, which isn't that. I mean, from ours actually, that's not as far as Heathrow, but he was driving at 50 on an empty motorway. It's almost like he was prolonging the chat. There's a point at which
You were giving good conversation, that's the problem.
I was trying not to. I mean, it's 5:30 in the morning. I don't.
Nobody wants
good
to
conversation,
talk.
isn't?
That time of day.
Really parking. Yeah.
Take the clue. I'm not answering. Read the response rate. What's the name of the man who owns Uber? Dave Uber? What's his name? Dave McUber?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Did you see that clip of how he got picked up by one of his own drivers?
Yeah, and then he started shouting at him and stuff.
And they fell out over the deal because Uber drivers don't get a good deal from Uber, and they fell out, didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, I've only ever been in an Uber once. There are those who say it's ethically bad. How do you feel about that?
I had this conversation with a couple of drivers. I specifically asked them about it. And the couple that I asked about their feelings about working for Uber and whether they thought they were being ripped off or getting a fair deal, they said they were quite happy. I don't know whether they thought I was an undercover kind of undercover spy for Uber, or whether they were being completely honest. For one of them, it wasn't a primary source of income. You know, they said it just helped them cover their costs of running the vehicle. They had other work going on, and they were perfectly happy with it. So, yeah, I don't know, but I can only report what they said.
I'm not sure I believe that. Covers the cost of running the vehicle. Well, if you didn't drive around all day carrying people, you wouldn't have those costs. Stay at home. You have a better life-work balance, Uber driver.
Yes, running this bakery just about covers all of my dough costs.
That
wasn't a pun. I had the same conversation I have had when I've not been being grumpy or looking out the window. One of the reasons I sort of sometimes quite like silence in the cab is, you know, a lot of people just sit there and look at their phones, but I really like looking out the window of taxis because when you're driving, you don't get to, particularly going on a route,
you only see the road in front of you.
You get to see stuff that you haven't noticed, and I really like that. And I like this sort of moment of tranquility of just looking out the window and just taking in the surroundings and watching the city go by. But I have asked Uber drivers in the UK if they like doing it, and they've always gone, yeah, it's all right, you know. I've never had one who complained. But this goes back to calling a couple of Ubers in Los Angeles. First one turned up, Price. Guy started chatting. It was the middle of the day. Really lovely guy, and he, in fact, is an Uber driver and also has an account with Lyft, which is Uber's rival in the US.
Are they allowed to do that?
Yeah, well, Uber try and stop you doing it, but they
Right.
can't, because everyone is a freelancer, they can't stop you. They can only attempt to win you over and make you exclusively Uber.
Right.
But
They
this
had
guy
to
said
give
he
you
just
more
likes to
employment
mix
rights
it up.
Yeah.
And I said, you happy you don't mind working long hours? And he went, no, because I work the hours I want to work. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've done a couple of drives and I don't feel like doing another one, and I'll just park up and I'll switch off the device, you know, the phone that they get given, and I'll have a kip or I'll go and have a coffee. And yeah, he was sort of making it sound like it's almost idyllic. But then Uber's being more interesting in America, going back to your original point. I was then picked up late at night from where I'd been out of mate's house at the beach in a Chrysler 300C, so immediately a bit more interesting than the Prius,
Nice.
by this old dude who was an aircraft engineer, and he'd most recently been in Germany working with Lufthansa, because he's a Boeing certified technician at their maintenance place in Frankfurt, I think. He'd do sort of a stint of 6 months just mending planes, and he'd done all sorts. He was telling me all these amazingly interesting things about planes.
Which one's to fine, which one's not to fine.
Well, yeah, but he's done this incredible thing about how Southwestern Airlines in the US ordered new 737s. There was a massive wait for them. They went, we're not going to wait that long. They basically had their existing 737 fleet rebuilt, kind of reskinned and new wings put on. He said it was a fraction of the cost, and I went, I don't like the sound of that. And he went, it's perfectly safe. They can do it all the time.
They do that refits.
Yeah,
They
and it's
often,
just, but it's like the most
military aircraft
incredible.
get
It means that
that.
their flying life now is suddenly almost the same as a brand new plane, because all of the safety critical parts, the wings, undercarriage, engines, are brand new. But the airframe, as long as it's got life left in it, is actually okay. He's telling me all this stuff. And then when he's got a bit of downtime, he just does a bit of Ubering. He said it's mostly just something to do.
Social.
Yeah. And keeps a bit of money coming in. He doesn't have to make a lot.
And of course,
money.
you know, petrol being the price it is in the US relative to here, he can run a V8 engine Hemied 300C and all good.
My mate H is a black cab driver, and I'm almost tempted to phone him up now and say, H, what's your official line on Uber? He really, as a black cab drivers, think Uber are the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
And
they're not. Yeah, a lot of competition there.
Yeah, not as well vetted as black cab drivers who have to jump through hoops, don't
That
they?
is true, and I do agree with to a point. And actually, I was just saying, because Uber, not only that boss guy shouting at one of his own drivers and all this stuff about their sort of internal problems and politics, institutional sexism and all sorts of things. It sounds like a fairly ugly corporation internally. They've got a lot of problems they're trying to work out. And it would be nice if Lyft started up here to give some alternative to Uber, because also, without wishing to sound like Norman Tebbit or something, competition is good in the marketplace, isn't it? And this is why I don't think cab drivers who, and it's not a cliche because I've had it happen to me more than once, cab drivers, well, of course, Mrs. Thatcher wouldn't have stabbed for this, would she? And you always go, cab drivers bingo card. And you go, if you like Mrs. Thatcher so much, and Mrs. Thatcher liked competition, you can't complain about Uber, my friend.
Yeah, she's very keen on market forces.
Also, the last two black cabs that I've had were both driven by obnoxious racist. As far as I'm concerned, they can all be driven into the sea. They deserve it. Horrible people.
You made the mistake there. Instead of dialing Uber, you dialed UKIP, didn't you? By mistake. And
no, black cab drivers, though. That's the thing. They are. UKIP is the rival to Uber, and it's all black cabs.
Do you know what? It doesn't take much to set up a rival to Uber. Surely all you need is a website and an app and a bunch of people willing to drive around in cars. I'm going to set one up, call it Top Cars or something like that.
And not have that space already occupied by a couple of really successful companies.
Yeah.
Well, you just need the massive infrastructure.
There is that sort of resistance to Uber slightly, although they've distanced themselves from Trump now, haven't they? There was some issue where they were linked to Trump in some way, and there was a massive boycott, particularly in California, of Uber.
That's the thing, but they do have an alternative there because they have Lyft. There's still sort of space in the market, isn't it? Because that's the thing. People do react against a company when it does something that they don't like.
Yeah, two things on Uber generally. It strikes me that, first of all, I'm sure that there's a lot of fiddling small detail stuff that they had to get absolutely right in order for Uber to work. And when you're somebody that wants to get from A to B quickly and not pay too much for it, recently my experience has been that in both London and in Las Vegas, Uber is brilliant. But I know at least two women who will not use Uber at all because they don't trust the driver vetting and they prefer to take a black cab. They have more trust in
low-level racism.
They're more prepared to tolerate low-level racism than possibility of
sexual assault.
But just very quickly, that's the thing. There are two things. Uber, dubious maybe. I don't know. Do they pay their taxes? I'm not sure.
I'm sure they pay some tax somewhere.
They certainly don't pay their taxes.
I don't know.
But this is the thing. You'll put up with. You'll go, well, no, I'm going to take a principled stand against these people. Except, they are convenient, aren't they? They're convenient. Just very quickly, one final point. I know I was sort of railing against certain black cab drivers because I had the last two experiences I had were not brilliant, and I just thought, you know what, you've got this coming, gentlemen, with Uber. But I am quite excited about that new black cab that's coming, the TX5.
Oh yeah,
the hybrid electric one.
It's a range extender.
Range extender, and I think it looks quite nice, and it's interesting new technology.
Yeah.
Also, not really widely reported, but in all intents and purposes, it seems to be a Volvo XC90 underneath.
I was about to say that,
which is extraordinary. So maybe for the first time ever, a black cab will ride properly.
Yeah.
Although thinking back, the XC90 that I drove didn't ride very well at all. So damn.
But as a Londoner, I welcome Geely doing something to improve the air in town. If we get rid of those black belching cabs and replace them with something a bit more eco-friendly, that would work for me. Although my mate H, who's a cab driver, says, I can't afford a new cab, I'll have to lease it. So like 10 years old, they're not allowed to drive cars older than 10 years old.
They're all leased, pretty much, aren't they? I think that's...
no, there are plenty of owner operators still.
But I think
older
even
guys.
the sort of existing TX4 are they what, sort of like 40, 50 grand?
Yeah.
And
45 grand, I think.
I mean, I was sort of railing against cab drivers, but over the years I've had some really nice black cab drivers, and I always like talking to them about their cabs because I know that the TX4s had loads of problems with them, and they didn't particularly like them, and a lot of them were switching to those Merc Vitos, which actually it turns out had problems as well. But the TX4s, doors dropping and all sorts of problems, and axles going and things.
It's a punishing regime to put a
vehicle. It is. That's the thing. It really is.
Bring back the Metro cab, I say. That was my favourite. Hello, are you my cab? Is that a yes? You don't look like a cab. I'm not sure this is our cab.
Well, which app did you book it through?
You know, the usual one.
What usual one?
The one everyone uses. Look, Uber.
You idiot, that's Tubo.
Oh, no.
Excuse me, mate, got another 47 kilos of clarified butter for you. What?
Oh, Jesus, you've been on eBay again.
Sniff Petrol with Gareth Jones on speed!
I love a concept car. You love a concept car, Richard. We all love a concept car.
Yes.
But there was a concept car which emerged recently out to Geneva. I'm going to refer to my Autocar magazine here. Other magazines are available. Also, on the subject of autocar, sorry, before I get to this, Zach Brown, who now runs McLaren, also runs Autocar, Autosport, motorsport.com and Motorsport magazine. Is that right? Yeah. I was astonished to see on the cover of Autosport the other week, McLaren crisis. If ever there's a conflict of interest or honest journalism, fair play.
A good publisher doesn't interfere with their editorial staff.
Fair play.
They know that editorial independence is vital to a healthy magazine.
Amen to that.
So, returning to my original topic, which is this concept car, the Bentley EXP 12 Speed 6E. Catchy name, eh?
Rolls off the tongue.
I love Bentleys. I loved the previous Continental. I think it was one of the most lovely, handsome cars. I think the Touring Superleggera shooting brake version is the most lovely car in the last 30 years. I think this is a beautiful looking car, but I'm not convinced it will actually work or sell.
Well, it's a
But
concept car.
They're pointing the way to the future.
Yeah,
they're
it's a
just
toe in the water, I think, just to go...
But my point is, if Bentley are going to provide an electrically powered automobile, it's going to have at least 300 miles range at Bentley velocities.
Well, yes, but don't assume that Bentley velocities are any faster than any other car. Because I think every Conti
got to drive
GT
on
I
actual
see,
roads.
Yeah, every Conti GT I see. There's certain cars you get that burn past you on the motorway, where you sort of think, I reckon. You ever try and do that? You're going on the motorway, you see something coming up fast, when you can, you move out of the way, let them through. I don't want to impede someone's progress. But as they go by, you think, well, now I'm doing whatever speed I'm doing, which may be
68 miles per hour.
Yes, thereabouts, yes, because anything more than 70 would be illegal.
Oh, of course.
But then you try to estimate how quickly they're going, and you're sort of thinking, he's doing like 110, I reckon. When someone really blats by. But invariably, that will be an Audi A4 TDI, or a Passat,
yes,
or a BMW 3
or
Series.
a Transit van.
Or it will not be a supercar. All supercars you ever see on the motorway, I think, almost without exception, in Britain at least, are in the inside or middle lane doing 68 miles an hour, driven by some silver fox who's treated himself and his hip pops out every time he gets in and out of it. The Conti GT is great for the older person because it's not so low down. I can't remember the last time I saw a Bentley being driven in a spirited fashion.
But what about our European neighbours, our German neighbours, where there are stretches where you can bat along at ridiculous speeds? If you do that in that Bentley, you can have a 20-mile range before you've got to recharge.
That's fine, you just won't buy it. I think that's the thing. You've got plenty of choice of other cars you could buy if you are that sort of... and let's not forget, not all the Autobahns are de-restricted
yes,
as well.
Indeed, yes.
And even the ones that are de-restricted, I speak from experience of you go, oh, brilliant, de-restricted Autobahn. There's loads of cars in the way. Not actually going that fast.
5 minutes later, you have to slow down.
It's
speed.
just...
Plus, you've had your kicks.
Yeah.
You've had that little thrill of going super fast somewhere like it feels like you shouldn't be.
Well, it's also the other sort of imagined thing about the de-restricted Autobahns of Germany is that everybody is driving as fast as their car will possibly go. And you've got sort of polos straining at the seams doing 98 miles an hour and then just being
Bits
whacked
falling
into
off.
submission by all these M5s clattering into their 155 mile an hour limiter. It's not the case. I'm sure it is an issue for a segment of the Bentley buying population, but not a massive one. I think Bentleys they're sort of fat boy cars, aren't they? They're cruisers, they're relaxed, even though Bentley will try and claim otherwise. And if Tesla can do perfectly well, and I think Bentley can as well. The thing about a lot of those sort of big engine cruising cars is that their buyers are looking for not economy from the engine per se, but what they want is range. They do want range, in as much as they hate filling up. I was driving the new Porsche Panamera diesel the other day, and I was telling a mate about it that evening, and he went, diesel? Why would anyone who can afford a Porsche Panamera want diesel? Ugh. And I went, because It's not about the economy of the engine as such. It's just that
it's a grand tourer.
It's just a waste of time. If you're the kind of person who's a sort of snappy-fingered go-getter kind of bloke, then you're going to think that filling up with fuel is just eating into your day.
Although you do get to hang around on a garage forecourt looking rather cool while you're filling up your Bentley or your Panamera.
The tech in that Bentley, is it going to be the same as the Mission E Porsche and the Audi e-tron A6, whatever they're going to call it when they make it?
No. Well, it might be. The thing is, it is a concept. I know someone who's seen the new Continental GT that's coming quite soon, and a lot of the styling is very similar. He says the new Conti GT is stunning. This is someone who doesn't work for Bentley. And the new Continental GT is, in fact, on the Panamera box of parts. It's that chassis. The Mission E is a new and bespoke electric car platform. Now, that's an expensive thing to do. Porsche will definitely get more than one model off it. There'll be the Mission E, which I think will be a saloon. Then there'll be some kind of SUV, almost certainly, because SUVs are popular. But you wouldn't bet against them then using that box of parts across the sort of top tier of the Volkswagen group.
Yeah.
I don't think Lamborghini'd want it, because electric Lamborghini seems like it might be pushing it at this stage.
But it'll happen just because they'll get more performance out of it. They're both
exactly. But a pure electric Lamborghini is probably a step too far at the moment.
Yeah.
A pure electric Bentley, if the range was right, that you could drive it in a spirited way. Because they'd want to be able to claim that you could, even though most people won't. But I don't know. I think there's a reason why electric power could be very right for Bentley, which is that the great thing about every Bentley I've ever driven is massive reserves of torque, which makes them feel mighty and effortless.
Yeah,
and that's what electricity does par excellence in all cars.
Instant
and
drums.
it does it, quietly. It doesn't do it in a huge, loud way. And Bentleys aren't big, loud cars. They're restrained. They may sound good, but they don't sound super loud. It's a nice.
No, it's a velvety sort of. Yeah. It's like music in the next room sort of sound, isn't it? It's like
Iron Fist in a velvet glove.
It's like being in the loo at a nightclub. You can still hit them, but it's not in your ears.
Rolls-Royce,
rather than head in the bass bin.
Rolls-Royce have a view on electric cars. When I went down for the tour of Goodwood, they said to me while we were there that they had produced that, what's it called, Concept 100, whatever it's called, that lovely electric futuristic thing.
Yeah.
They said, well, that really is just a vision. It's not something that we can do immediately or even in the near future, because electric power for the kind of range and performance that we would like to provide our customers simply isn't possible at the moment. And hydrogen, maybe? A hydrogen Rolls-Royce? There's an electric car with a decent range and refinement. I'm a big fan of the refinement that comes with an electric car. I'm a big fan of using hydrogen to transport your energy around as opposed to big heavy batteries. Maybe Bentley ought to rethink and stick a...
But that's going to depend a lot on how the infrastructure goes. If your electric infrastructure is taking off and the hydrogen infrastructure doesn't... then hydrogen isn't even an option for
it's weird, really, because BMW, remember, were very big on hydrogen sort of before
that's
anyone
right.
else. Remember, they had 7 Series in the 80s and 90s.
They had a project going with Mercedes where they developed hydrogen technology together. BMW and Mercedes worked together, which is why I cited Mercedes in our Gary Newman style song about electric cars, because they were the real pioneers of it. Yeah,
but it's funny how BMW sort of seems to have gone quiet on it. And they're sort of pushing towards electric with what they're doing, certainly in the near future.
I assume that's just to do with where they see the roadmap for infrastructure going. That's just...
Well, this is what I was going to say. I think if you were, say, Rolls-Royce, and it's like, which would happen first? The battery technology arriving at a point where you could judge to give your car sufficient range, and proportionately as well how long they would take to charge, so that you're not inconveniencing your customers, versus the hydrogen infrastructure growing. I think I would bet on the batteries.
Particularly if you're doing it in the context of a big, heavy car that can take the batteries more easily than, let's say, a lighter weight sports car. You can accept a bit of a weight penalty in a Rolls-Royce where you couldn't in a Ferrari, perhaps.
Hydrogen infrastructure. As you know, I've been making a programme for BBC Radio Wales about 2 Welsh car manufacturers. But as part of that, it emerged that some fairly fundamental changes to the hydrogen infrastructure are going into Wales quite soon, which is quite surprising because, we haven't the density of population in Wales to make that sort of thing viable. But what you do need in Wales from an electric car is something with a bit of range. Because you can have a long gap before you can recharge your car. And hydrogen does offer you better range than most electric cars, double the range of most battery electric cars at the moment. So you're right, there's a tipping point. The money is definitely going into recharging points for battery electric cars at the moment. But it's starting to happen for the infrastructure for hydrogen cars too. And as more hydrogen cars become available and the price comes down, that's going to change. But we're nowhere near that yet, are we?
No. Obviously, Toyota and Honda
Yep.
explicitly have hydrogen development programs and
Hyundai.
actual cars out there. Hyundai too, yeah. And then I'm not quite sure who else is really explicitly, or at least admitting to putting any real effort into it, because it seems like they're all heading down the petrol hybrids or the
Battery
pure electric
electric,
route. I don't know.
Well, pure electric is easy to kind of develop alongside an improved national grid, smart grid.
Yeah.
It's easier to develop the infrastructure, the backbone, the things that are supporting the cars on the road than it is a hydrogen.
The great advantage of the battery electric car, of course, at the moment is as we shift towards renewables, where we're getting our energy from wind and solar, your battery car at home becomes your way of storing electricity that the grid cannot store. So this is what Tesla's been talking about, the power wall, whereby your car and your home's electricity supply become completely integrated. You use it when you're out driving, but when it's at home, it's a way of storing power from the grid. Makes perfect sense.
This just reminded me of something else, though. Another possible power source or hybrid power source, which has all gone away a little bit. Do you remember Peugeot Citroën had that compressed air
Yes,
system?
yes.
And I think
yeah.
I read somewhere officially they've just dropped it. Because I remember at the time reading about it when they announced it and thinking,
That makes sense.
That does make sense. Or does it? I don't understand it enough because it seems so simple and yet I'm sure there's a catch here. Why is nobody else doing it?
I don't know, but I would guess that it has something to do with being a little bit scared of the inherent danger in having a tank compressed with air to the kind of pressure that you'd need to run your car for any useful length of time. I guess, to put it simply, any way that you can think of to store energy, in the end you can run a vehicle from. Whether it's storing electrical energy in a battery, whether it's storing chemical energy in a fossil fuel by millions of years of process of whatever it is that those plants do when they get stuck under the ground and squashed and all that kind of stuff, or whether it's compressing air in a tank. You store up the energy, you can get it out again and you can run a vehicle. But maybe having that much energy in a tank of compressed air is risky. I know that if you have a scuba tank, which is basically what you're talking about here, but
You could kill Jaws.
Well, you can, because the approximate energy that you have in a scuba tank, if it gets stuck in a fire and if the metal fails, as it will, and the tank then explodes, it'll go off with about the explosive force of a typical hand grenade.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you've got quite a lot of energy in that,
No wonder
in
the
that
shark
scuba
blew
tank.
up.
What Peugeot Citroën were proposing, if I remember, was not a pure system of powering your car, but an energy assist. So the recovered energy under braking would be forced into this compressed air cylinder. Then when you need it, it would give you a bit of a boost as you put the throttle down. Now, over the years, for watches, we found that clockwork is much better than compressed air. So why did they ever
Speak for
choose...
yourself. That's how I lost my hand.
Why don't we have clockwork energy recovery cars? Imagine a runny great spring that would tension up under braking, and then when you need a bit of thrust, just let it go.
You've seen those clockwork toy cars.
Yeah.
Well, would you want to scale one of those up to...
It's a terrifying
family car
idea,
size?
isn't it?
I don't know.
Geared properly, it'd be all right.
Think what happens when that mainspring lets go. If you have basically a clockwork toy car
no, even
scale
better
up.
than that. Those ones you pull back. So every morning before you set off for work, you have to start the petrol engine, reverse up your street, switch off the petrol engine, and bam, off you go.
My dad nearly bought a watch from a bloke once. He said, look, it's guaranteed for life, this watch. I said, what, is it electric? He said, no, it's clockwork. So what do you mean it's guaranteed for life as well? When the mainspring breaks, it slits your wrist. I think we'll leave it there, won't we? You've been listening to Richard Porter.
Goodbye.
To Zog.
Goodbye.
I was Gareth. Sorry about the bad jokes. We're going to leave you with a tune. This is the On Speed Band, recorded live at 10 years on Speed. Our song in the style of Gary Newman. It's called My Car's Electric. See ya.
I toyed with buying a Toyota, but a hybrid's not my style. I like electronics, calculators, and fuel's expensive if you pay by the mile. The fuel sounds for fools hell. I'm not sure if it'll even work. I don't want water in my exhaust pipe, even if my car's a Merc. Hydrogen sounds like an option, or whether you stay with motion. And just like you, I must admit, I'm worried about explosion. I decided to burn myself on those electric cars. I know it's not much, at least I'm exempt from paying the congestion charge. My automobile's electronic, it sometimes produces sparks. I'm gonna recharge it when I'm down in the park. Electronic, it sometimes produces sparks. My car's electric, I'm gonna recharge it when I'm down in the park. Gonna buy myself a G-Wheels, it's environmentally friendly. Also cash, up to 30 miles per hour. I hope I don't crash. It's cute and small and friendly. It's frankly fantastic. And just like a Sinclair C5, it's mostly made of plastic. It's an iconoclastic. I'm in trouble with my BMW 5 Series. It's the iDrive, you know, the graphical user interface. I'm telling you, this is serious. I drive, you drive. I drive, you drive. I'm paying attention to start pollution. I turn to technology for my solution. Now the cars are electronic. I'm gonna have my real my monk. And I am Sonic. Man is broken.
Send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!